Ladies and gentlemen, there is a quiet mystery that shapes the way men fall in love, an invisible force that pulls them towards something they themselves barely understand. It's not merely about appearance, chemistry, or conversation. It is far deeper, embedded in the very architecture of the male psyche. But here's the great irony. While this force shapes a man's deepest affections, it often passes unnoticed by the very women who inspire it. Tonight, we are not here to speak in clichés or surface-level psychology. We are here to enter the symbolic heart of the matter, to unravel the hidden reasons why men fall in love, and why women often miss the signs entirely. Let us begin. In every man lives a hidden image, a silent portrait of the feminine that resides not in his mind, but deep in the unconscious well of his being. It is not created by culture, nor is it merely shaped by past lovers or childhood impressions, though those certainly give it color and voice. This image, the feminine within, emerges from the soul itself. It is not about body or form or any physical standard of beauty. Rather, it is a presence, a mood, a spiritual essence. It is the dream of something lost, something once known and now longed for, without name. Men carry this image often without knowing it. It waits silently, hidden beneath the surface of bravado, accomplishment, and logic. He may think himself in control of his desires, choosing rationally whom to love. But then it happens. He meets someone, and not just anyone. He meets her. Not the most beautiful woman in the room, not the loudest or most obvious, but something about her pierces through his defenses, like a beam of light in a dark cathedral. It is as if a forgotten part of him is calling out and has been answered. She may laugh in a way that feels like something from his childhood, pure, unguarded, and real. She may listen to him without judgment, with a presence that disarms him. She might look at the world with a blend of strength and grace that echoes something he's only ever glimpsed in dreams. In these moments, she embodies his inner feminine, not in some romanticized or idealized sense, but as a living reflection of the part of him that longs to feel whole. He does not desire her in the shallow sense of the word. Desire is too weak a word. He recognizes her. That is the word that fits. Recognition implies memory, familiarity, a homecoming, and it is this recognition that causes him to fall. Not quickly, not with fireworks, but with depth and gravity. He is not falling into her, but into himself, into the lost chambers of his soul she has unknowingly unlocked. But here lies the tension. She often does not realize the impact she has made. Because the connection was not transactional, not marked by grand gestures or confessions, but by something that happened wordlessly between glances, between the lines of conversation, in the tone of her voice when she spoke with sincerity. She may think it was a pleasant moment, a good conversation, a shared laugh. She may never know that in that moment something shifted within him, that he began to see her not just as a person, but as a mirror of something sacred inside himself. This is the silent tragedy of so many stories. The man walks away altered, unable to explain why she haunts him, why he compares others to her without meaning to, and she walks away unaware that her very being awakens something eternal in someone else. It is not her fault. No one told her that the soul of a man recognizes what the world teaches him to hide. Real love, for men, often begins at this recognition, not with lust, not with admiration, but with awe, with the soft inner voice that whispers, "There she is." It is the same voice that a boy hears when he reads his first poem, or sees the stars clearly for the first time, or listens to music that makes him cry. It is the voice of the sacred feminine, stirring in his chest. And when a living woman carries even a fraction of that spirit, she becomes more than herself in his eyes. She becomes the keeper of something he thought he had lost. This is not romantic fantasy, it is psychological reality. A man falls in love when he sees in a woman the presence of that inner world he never learned to name, and he may not understand why he wants to be near her, why her absence leaves a strange ache, why he longs for her even without words or certainty. He just knows, because part of him feels whole again. Not because she completes him, but because she reminds him of what completion feels like. And she may never know, because to her she was just being herself, just laughing, just listening, just being. But to him, she became a reflection of his soul, and he fell, not outward, but inward, into the quiet center of his own being, into love. The stories we are told about love, especially those meant for public consumption, are often loud. They involve grand entrances, passionate speeches, and dramatic confessions under the rain. But for many men, the truth is quieter. It does not arrive with thunder. It unfolds in the spaces in between, in the small details and the subtle gestures that speak directly to something deep inside. Men do not often fall in love with fireworks. They fall in love in the silence after the noise, in moments so small they can be easily missed, but so meaningful they reshape the very ground beneath them. The masculine journey, shaped by centuries of expectation, tends toward containment. From an early age, many men are taught to toughen up, to suppress vulnerability, to replace expression with endurance. Over time, they build a kind of armor, not because they are cold, but because they believe they must be strong to survive, and, within that armor, many learn to live quietly with loneliness, even in the company of others. So when something pierces that armor, when something feels real in a way that doesn't demand a defense, it strikes at the very heart of who they are. That is when the falling begins. It is not the grand declarations that reach them. It is the small, human, almost imperceptible acts. A woman remembers a story he told months ago, not because it was impressive, but because it mattered to him. She notices when he's quiet, not because he's being distant, but because he's trying to hold something together. She doesn't need to solve his pain. She just sits with him in it. And in these simple moments, something shifts. He begins to trust not just her, but the idea that perhaps love is not a battlefield, but a refuge. Michael once believed love was fiction, the product of stories written for someone else, not him. He moved through life with politeness, did his job well, joked with friends, and told himself he was fine. But then one day something unremarkable happened. A co-worker handed him his coffee. It wasn't the coffee that mattered, it was that she got it exactly right. No sugar, extra hot, oat milk. A detail he'd mentioned once in passing. No fanfare, no special meaning to her, perhaps, but to him it was seismic. In that simple moment he felt something he hadn't felt in years, seen, and, more startling than that, accepted. This is how men often fall. Not all at once, but piece by piece, as if someone were slowly unfastening the buckles on the armor they thought they would die wearing. One small gesture at a time they begin to emerge, blinking into a light that does not blind but warms. They begin to believe that maybe they don't need to be entirely invulnerable to be worthy of connection. Maybe being human is enough. The tragedy is, these moments often go unnoticed. Because to the woman, it was just kindness, just listening, just coffee. She did not realize that something inside him had shifted, that a crack had formed in the wall he had spent decades building, and in that crack something fragile and beautiful began to grow. It's not that men are less romantic or less emotional, on the contrary. They are often profoundly sensitive beneath the surface, but their pathways to love are often different. They are not looking for spectacle, they are looking for safety. They are not waiting to be swept away, they are waiting to be allowed in. What touches them most is not being impressed, it is being understood. Being known in the quiet way that says, I see you, I don't need you to perform. You are enough here. These are the kinds of moments that linger long after the world has moved on. The way she touched his shoulder when he was lost in thought. The way she remembered his father's name. The way she looked at him when he wasn't saying anything at all. These moments are like seeds planted in the unconscious. They don't bloom immediately, but over time they grow into something strong enough to call love. And perhaps this is why love can be so confusing between men and women, because while one may be waiting for a sign, the other has already fallen. Not because of a grand gesture, but because of a moment that felt like home. A moment that made him feel, however briefly, that he was not alone. It often surprises people to hear that men do not fall in love when they are praised or adored, but when they feel they are becoming more of who they are meant to be. Not more impressive, not more successful, simply more true, more whole, more alive. It may seem like a paradox in a world obsessed with admiration and surface attraction, but for many men, love is not just an emotional attachment. It is a calling to rise into a fuller version of themselves. There is something in the masculine psyche that is not content with stillness. It is wired not merely for the pursuit of happiness, but for the pursuit of meaning, purpose, impact. For centuries, this drive has been expressed through acts of service, creation, protection, building. And yet, beneath the weight of modern expectations and unspoken fears, many men have forgotten what they are truly capable of. They walk the world half awake, numb to their own potential, silencing the voice that once whispered they could be something more. And then, sometimes unexpectedly, a woman appears, not to complete him, not to fix him, but to reflect back something he had stopped believing in himself. She does not coddle, she does not shrink in his presence. She sees him, truly sees him, and speaks to the part of him that still remembers his own strength. Not the strength to dominate or control, but the strength to protect, to create, to love fully and without fear. In her presence, he does not feel tamed, he feels released. There is a kind of love that doesn't demand that a man be smaller to make space for it. On the contrary, it draws him out, it challenges his limitations, it invites him to become the kind of man he has always hoped to be. That love does not always come softly. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a woman who dares to tell him the truth he's been running from, who looks him in the eye without flattery and says, "You're hiding." And in that moment, if he is ready, something stirs within him. Not shame, not defensiveness, but a sudden awareness that he could be more. Adam was such a man. For years he moved through life with an easy charm that concealed a deep uncertainty. He laughed often, avoided conflict, and never let anyone get too close. He had dreams, yes, but they sat on dusty shelves in the back of his mind. And then, one evening, after a casual conversation turned unexpectedly serious, the woman sitting across from him said, without judgment or expectation, "You could do something incredible if you stopped hiding." She said it simply, as if it were an obvious truth. That night, Adam didn't sleep, not because he was troubled, but because he was awakened, not to her, but to himself. He saw something in her eyes that mirrored back the man he longed to be, and for the first time in years he believed that he could become him. That night he said to a friend, "I think I just met the woman I'll marry." She, of course, had no idea. To her it had been a moment of honesty. To him it had been a spark in the dark. This is the often unseen moment when love begins for a man. When he feels not worshipped, but witnessed. When his strength is not feared, but welcomed. When his fears are not mocked, but met with understanding. When his dreams are not laughed at, but taken seriously. In that space he falls, not because he has found someone to save, but because he has found someone who believes he is worth saving himself. The essence of this kind of love is not about dependency or rescue, it is about activation. It is about standing in the presence of someone who reminds you of who you are, who calls out the hidden potential, who invites you to rise without demanding perfection. This is the love that men carry quietly, the kind that anchors them even in chaos. It is the love they return to even after years have passed, remembering how they once felt seen in the eyes of someone who expected nothing but believed everything. And yet, many women never realized the role they played. They were just being honest, just speaking their truth, just refusing to shrink. But in doing so, they became a mirror, not of his flaws, but of his possibility. And that is where a man's love begins, not with admiration, but with transformation. Love for many men begins not with declarations, but with observation. It is not broadcasted, but cultivated quietly, like a fire that catches slowly in dry wood, unseen until it gives off warmth. There is a silence to the way a man falls in love, a silence that is often misunderstood as indifference. But within that silence is a deep and careful unfolding. It is not absence, it is presence without demand, it is attention without performance, and it is real. He does not always say what he feels, not because he doesn't feel, but because what he feels is too sacred to be thrown into the noise. While the world may expect love to be loud, measured in gifts, gestures, and glittering words, a man's love often grows in spaces where no one is watching, in moments that do not call for applause. His feelings are not hurried. They settle slowly, shaped by consistency, steadiness, and time. In this silence, he is gathering truth. He watches her. Yes, watches, in the way a gardener watches the seasons. He observes how she treats the waitress, how she reacts when plans fall apart, how she holds herself in solitude. He listens not only to her words, but to the pauses between them. He notices when she is tired, when she is pretending, when she needs space. And without saying so, he adjusts, quietly, thoughtfully. There is reverence in this kind of love. Not infatuation, which burns too fast and too bright, but something sturdier, something that holds, something that over time becomes a kind of devotion. But this kind of love rarely announces itself. It shows up in small, unwavering acts. He answers her messages quickly, not because he's desperate, but because he wants her to feel safe. He drives across town to fix something broken in her apartment, not because he's proving himself, but because he wants her world to feel just a little lighter. He checks if she's eaten, if she got home safe, if her headache is gone. No fanfare. But often this love goes unseen, because women too are looking for signs. Many of them shaped by stories where love is proven through spectacle. Words, surprises, clear markers. She may not see that he has already fallen, not in a moment, but over many. In glances she didn't notice, in quiet gestures she thought were ordinary, in a loyalty he never spoke of, but lives out each day without being asked. And this is where the silence becomes heavy, because he is there fully, and she wonders if he is. She asks herself if he truly cares, not realizing that his care is hidden in the way he stays, the way he remembers, the way he knows her rhythms. He stares at her just a second too long when she's not looking, his eyes memorizing something he does not know how to say. And when she leaves the room, a part of him remains behind, still tethered to the space she filled. Men fall in love like this, not with noise, but with stillness, with watching and listening and showing up again and again. They stay in love in the same way, not with bouquets, but with presence, with the way he continues to take her hand even when she's angry, with the way he chooses her again, not because everything is perfect, but because she has become a part of the life he cannot imagine without her. This kind of love does not shout. It endures, it deepens, it becomes something sacred, quietly rooted in the ordinary. It is not the kind of love that writes itself in the sky. It writes itself in the way he softens around her, in the way he wants to become a better man, not for praise, but because she inspires him to do so, in the way her joy becomes his own, and her pain his silent ache. He loves her, she just may not see it yet, not because she's blind, but because his love is not a performance. It is a quiet vow, a steady flame, a constant presence, and perhaps one day, when she looks back, not at the loud moments, but at the ones between, she will realize he was there all along, not waiting to be loved, but loving in silence. There is within every man a place he rarely reveals. It is not weakness, though it feels like it. It is not shame, though he's carried it like a second skin. It is the wounded boy, the child who was once told that to be loved he must not fall, must not cry, must not tremble. And so he learned, as so many boys do, to harden, to straighten his back even when it hurt, to smile even when he was breaking, to offer strength and silence instead of pain and truth. Over time, he forgot that there was anything beneath the armor at all. But that boy never disappeared. He simply went underground. He became the quiet tension in the shoulders, the unexplained silence when things get too close, the anger that rises at the wrong time and refuses to leave. He became the reason a man pulls away when he wants to lean in, why he chooses distraction over intimacy or perfection over vulnerability. That boy still waits, not for rescue, but for someone to look at him and not turn away. And when a woman sees him, not the curated version he offers the world, not the polished man with answers and charm, but truly sees him, fragile and unsure, uncertain and aching, something profound begins to happen, not because she pities him, not because she wants to fix him, but because she stays, because she does not ask him to become more than he is in that moment, because she does not flinch at the truth of his hurt. That kind of presence is a balm to a soul long starved of safety. A man who has carried his wounds in silence begins to experience love not as a transaction, something to earn through strength, success, or control, but as something he is allowed to receive even when he feels unworthy, especially when he feels unworthy. The wound becomes the doorway, not the wall. In that moment, he learns a new story, that he is still worthy of being chosen, even when he cannot offer anything but his truth. One man told me of the moment everything changed for him. It was not during a celebration, not during romance or joy. It was the night he broke. He wept, not the neat, acceptable kind of tears, but the raw, guttural sobs of someone who had carried too much for too long. He expected her to leave. He expected shame. He braced himself for rejection. But she didn't leave. She didn't speak. She just stayed, held his hand, let him fall apart without judgment. And when it was over, she looked at him, not as less of a man, but as someone finally whole. That, he said, was the day I knew I was hers. Because in that moment, love stopped being about proving anything. It became about presence. It became about truth. It became about being fully seen and not abandoned. Not because she had the power to heal him, but because she didn't require him to be unbroken. For many men, this is the threshold. They will endure hardship, they will offer loyalty, they will show up again and again. But the deepest falling happens here, when the walls crack and the boy they buried long ago finds light again, when the mask slips and they are met not with fear but with compassion, when they admit, even silently, this is who I am, and they are still held close. That is when love roots itself beyond doubt. That is when it ceases to be a risk and becomes a refuge. The woman who sees his wound and does not run becomes something far more than a partner. She becomes a mirror of mercy, a symbol of hope, a reminder that his softness is not a curse, but a doorway to intimacy. And yet she may not know the depth of what she has done. She may believe she was only being kind, only holding space, only listening. But for him, it is everything. For him, it is the undoing of years of silence, the soft breaking of chains he didn't know were still binding him. She becomes the first person he doesn't have to pretend with, and that, more than beauty, more than connection, more than shared dreams, is what makes him hers. Not because she changed him, but because she didn't ask him to be anything other than what he truly is. So why do men fall in love? Because something inside them remembers a part of themselves they lost, a softness they buried, a dream they forgot. And when a woman touches that part, often unknowingly, he falls, not with noise, but with awe. And if she doesn't notice, it's not because she doesn't care, it's because no one taught her to look for the signs. But tonight, I hope you begin to see them. Because when you do, when you notice the quiet way a man offers his heart, you will no longer wonder if he loves you. You'll understand how, and that changes everything. Thank you.